My last cosplay of 2025, and dare I say my most challenging project to date, was Lulu from Final Fantasy X. Here is my crafting journey on making this cosplay come to life. I draped the skirt using a stiff canvas to mimic the stiff drape of the faux leather I'm using for this cosplay. I pinned the seams for a tighter fit and decided to go for the shorter length in the front. Once perfecting the pattern, I cut out the skirt in the faux leather, 2 back pieces and 2 front pieces. Since you can't really iron the seam allowance on faux leather, after I straight stitched the seams, then I went and top stitched the seam allowance down on either side of the seam, giving it this nice detail that looks like the reference pic. I went ahead and put in the invisible zipper, taking it nice and slow so I won't have to unpick any of the stitching on the pleather if I mess up. Then I sewed in the other side of the zipper, still starting from the waist. I ended up putting in darts on the back of the skirt and top stitched the seam allowance down to continue that seam detail throughout the design. Alright, so I got the leather part done. Then I made a lining to go underneath so I can attach all the belts to this and then kind of sandwich it in between. And hopefully the weight of the belts will be more on the lining and won't be pulling the outside shell as much. And then of course she has a little peekaboo. You can see her thigh and her little tights. So I'm gonna have to probably adjust this exactly, but now I get to try to get all these belts onto the dress. I added bias tape about 1/4 of the way from the hem for a channel for a steel hoop, and then about struggled trying to get the hoop in there. Now for the most exciting part, to start playing with these belts. I hope I got enough. So I've been painting these belts. I needed more kind of gray ones, and then I wanted them to have a bit of an outline, just to give it a little more dimension. Because the gray turned out really flat once I spray painted it. So I think it looks pretty cool. And look at all these other belts I got, and then I just gotta put it on her, so hopefully I have enough. I continued to play around with the belt placement and used clips to secure them for the time being. My brain thought this was the best way to get the skirt off the dress form since it was so heavy. Whew, it's really hard to hold up and to zip it up by myself. Come on. Okay. I think that's as much as it's gonna zip up, but okay, my belts are coming off. There's belts coming off. That's okay. Like, what? I think I wanted to take that belt off anyways. After editing out some belts, I used contact cement to secure them down to the lining. I wasn't going to have any droopy belts on my cosplay. I had to crack open a new tube. That was easy. Yeah, I know I should have been wearing PPE while working with the contact cement, but I was just too excited to get this done. Alright, she's on. I need to secure the bottom belt. I just wanted to make sure that the length is good. Wow. It's heavy, but I think I'm gonna lower the hoop because it's too high up in the back. So I'm gonna try to lower the hoop and see if that doesn't make it look too fishtail, but the belts turned out way better than I imagined, so I'm very happy. I went ahead and secured the last belt across the hem of the skirt when we're having a problem. This belt is peeling on the back. Why? I think I gotta hand stitch it. Yay me. Luckily, the two belts that needed hand stitching had top stitched edges, so my needle could easily go through the already existing holes. Got this from Joann's before they closed. I got just oh my god. I just bought a bunch of freaking lace because I really have no idea what I'm doing. So we're just gonna have to piece it together and see what looks good. I cut out small pieces of trims to use and also had to cut out each individual flower on this embroidered tulle fabric. Once I got the embroidery motif arranged the way I like, I used a fabric glue to secure them down. Then I moved on to the embroidery on the longer skirt. I did a mock-up of the sleeves and sewed them up in the pleather, then attached more applique to those as well. For the corset, I draped a pattern on the dress form and cut it out of cotton twill. I also used the canvas as my interlining. Here's how the pieces look cut out and how they're pinned together and ready to sew. Of course, every seam needs to be pressed open, and here's how all the panels look, and here's the interlining side. Next, I sew the cup lining to the outside cups, then go back and sew an understitch with the seam allowance pressed towards the lining. Pressing the finished seam will keep it from bubbling. I reused an old bra for the cup padding, carefully cutting around it to get the right shape. I sew the outer cup layer to the corset, really getting into that curve. Then I sew the corset lining to the shell. And of course go back to do the understitch on the lining. I prepared some Ridgeline boning and top stitched them along the panel seams. This is how they look on the inside, and I went ahead and put in a separating zipper on the center front. I made a pattern for the boning channels, or trim, since they're not real functional boning channels and are just for looks. I upcycled a thin faux leather skirt for the boning channels, carefully stitching them to the corset. They had a bit of stretch, so I had to be careful. I added underwire for extra lift and support. Then I secure the padding to the seam allowance with some hand stitches. Now I gotta go hand sew all of this lining here, the cups. This is just to keep it nice and tight. But yeah, we're hand stitching the lining to the zipper and the bottom, and then the cups. Now I can go ahead with installing all of the eyelets for the corset back with this eyelet kit. For the first stole, my trick to cutting fur is to have the fur facing down, so I'm just cutting the knit backing. This method has the least amount of fur loss from cutting. So you can tell the difference between cut right side up versus cutting upside down. And I just sewed the two strips together, so see, you can totally see the difference. Blunt, layered. Blunt, layered. I cut a strip of cotton to line the stole. I sewed both long sides and one short side, leaving one short side open so I can turn it right side out and hand stitch the opening closed. For Lulu's Moogle, I eyeballed and sketched out a pattern. I only needed to revise the head size and the leg patterns. I dyed the fleece with Sharpies and rubbing alcohol to get the different details that I needed. I sewed up the limbs and the body, turning them right side out as I went. I made a zipper opening on the back of the head to hold my phone and other necessities. Oh, that's backwards. Is the head too big now? I don't know. I think it's kind of cute. I think the legs need to hang a little more straight, but it's so cute. I hand sewed all of the limbs and head to the body after stuffing it, then made wings with felt and wire, securing everything together with a zigzag stitch. This is the makeup test. I'm gonna pop on the wig because you really only see this side, so I only have one lash on. Haven't started the wig yet, but just for bang purposes for the makeup. I ended up using 2 wigs to make Lulu's do. I crimped all the hair and made wefts using Elmer's glue. After putting the base wig into a high ponytail, I glued wefts around the base of the hairline. Getting this wig in just a nice little ponytail has been insane. Has been driving me crazy. So I'm finally going to attach the little braids I made to give her some cornrows, and we're gonna work on that bun. I glued on braids to get her cornrow look and wrapped the extra braids around in a bun. Then I glued the bangs on with hot glue and styled them with lots of gel and hairspray. I looked everywhere for some large round purple glass beads, but ended up making my own with glass cabochons and foil paper. I sandwiched the foil and glass between the beading wire and hot glue. Then I secured the ends with a looped crimped bead and connected all the strands together with a jump ring and attached a lobster clasp. With that being the last accessory I decided to make, let's see how everything looks all together.
Ashton B. Designs as Lulu from Final Fantasy X.
This was my first time entering into a cosplay contest, and even though I didn't win anything, I learned a lot and had a really good time. The judges were all so nice and even considered bumping me up to journeyman even though this is my first contest. I met a lot of other amazing cosplayers and they were so nice to talk to. They were all very, very sweet and supporting and obviously very talented. Tell me what you think of my Lulu cosplay. Thank you for the support and watching my videos. See you next time.
I thought about doing this on stage.
Toast, toast.
Yeah, right.